I've owned my 2020 Toyota Supra for almost a year now. I'm gonna show you all of the things I've done to it, what it's like to daily drive, whether or not it's a good car to own, and if you should consider one. This is my 2020 Supra.
Do you think I should buy a Supra?
Yes. And this is Autovice. In 2017, I picked up a 2009 E92 M3. Shortly after that, Alex and I started hanging out and doing car stuff together. Here's my M3 and his bronze E30. But about a year into my ownership, I started going down the mod rabbit hole, and I went deep. I did things like a half roll cage, Sparco bucket seats and Takata harnesses, a wing that we no longer talk about, a CSL carbon fiber trunk, and I even stripped out most of the interior. Eventually I got the car to what I would consider a pretty good spot, but it was very far from stock. So I did all that work to the M3 because I felt like it was missing the X factor that I crave. Yes, the S65 engine is incredibly special and will probably go down into history, but I was going a little crazy. I wanted that car to feel more special than I think it's ever going to. So after the M3, I jumped into the M2, and unfortunately, it wasn't feeling special enough for me either. Now, the M2 is a very cool car and arguably one of the better coupes you can own. But like I said, it just wasn't feeling special enough. You see, BMW likes to take normal cars and M-ify them, give them an M badge, upgrade the suspension, slightly different engine, and that's all well and good, but at the end of the day, you're driving a pretty normal car that's just a little bit faster and more capable. For me personally, that wasn't quite enough. No matter how you feel about the Toyota Supra, you have to admit it's a pretty cool and special looking car. There's not a lot of them on the road, and honestly, for the price, you can't really get a more capable car. A few bolt-ons and a tune, and you're looking at 500 horsepower. All that said, as special as I think this car is from the factory, that doesn't mean I've left it completely unmodded. Being a car guy, I gotta make it my own. So let's walk through some of the mods, and I'll tell you why I did them and what I think about them. Since we're already at the back of the car, let's talk about the wing. It's a carbon fiber wing that's meant to look like what you could have gotten from the factory on the Mark IV Supra. Now, of course, this is no Mark IV Supra, but I think the wing adds a lot to the rear end. Next up is ride height. From the factory, I think the Supra sits a little bit too high, so I went with a set of Eibach lowering springs that, along with my custom wheels, fit perfect. Speaking of the wheels, I worked with a company based in California called GMR to spec out this custom set. These are 3-piece forged aluminum, and I'll leave all of the specifications down below. Next we have my very dirty AWE Touring exhaust. It looks great and sounds even better. And last I have an MST intake so I can hear a little bit more of the turbo. And, although you can't see it, a high flow downpipe. Now that might sound like a lot of mods, but if you compare it to what I did to the M3, Alex behind the camera can attest to how crazy I went with that car, and where I was headed with the M2, it's really not all that much, because I'm pretty much done with this car if I'm being honest. So what is it like to daily drive a Supra? Well, there are some compromises, but overall for a 2-seater sports car, it's pretty great. I mean, it's reasonably comfortable, even though I've lowered the car. It sounds great, and you can put it into sport mode and it sounds even better. There's not the most amount of storage. Obviously, it being a 2-seater car means that, well, you can only take one other person unless someone's willing to get in the trunk, which I don't recommend. So then the big question, should you own a Supra? Well, that is a tough one to answer, and I really can't tell you yes or no. For me, there are some challenges. Up until recently, it was genuinely my only car. My wife has a little Corolla, but if she's out and about, I don't have access to a vehicle that can hold more than one other person. And that obviously complicates things because, well, for example, a few weeks ago, I had to go pick up some friends from the airport and I couldn't because I didn't have a car that could fit all three of us. But if you can live with these compromises, the limited storage, the inability to carry more than 2 people in the car, I think it's pretty awesome. For the price, it's really hard to beat. Okay, enough of me talking outside the car. Let's jump in and we'll finish this video up. Speaking of those compromises, if you've watched other reviews on this car, people will say that the interior is a little claustrophobic is the term that they use. I wouldn't quite agree with that. I would say it's cozy. Yes, sometimes I pull up to stoplights and I have to lean down so that I can see underneath the roofline, but cozy or claustrophobic aside, you sit low, you sit in this car, and it feels like a proper sports car. So let's take it for a spin. All right, we're going for a little drive. We don't know where yet, but you can watch me drive my way too low Supra.
Low and slow.
Yeah. While we're driving, might as well talk about the comfort and practicality. Put the windows up here, put her in normal mode, auto. So this is a 2020, I don't have the manual version, but I gotta say, this ZF8 speed is incredible. In the E92 M3 that I had, it was a DCT. In the F87 M2 that I had, it was also a DCT. Dual clutch transmission, just in case you don't know what that means. Those are super fast to shift. Well, so is this shifter. It is crazy how quickly it will upshift and downshift for being a normal torque converter transmission.
Yeah, it's wild.
I have no issues with this transmission. Would I like to own the manual? No. Honestly, it's really nice to be able to just jump in this car and sit in really crappy traffic and just not think about it. And then when I want to, I can put it in manual mode and just go crazy and shift on my own. It's perfect.
Very nice for a car you gotta drive to work every day.
Yes, and that is, as a reminder, this is my daily driver. Eventually the 850 will be in a spot where it can be my daily driver, but I'll still likely swap between the two vehicles quite often because I love this car a lot. And my plan is to keep it long term. Would I take this on a 1,400 mile road trip? No, I really wouldn't.
I feel like if you had the stock rims and the stock suspension, maybe.
Yeah, and it's probably my own fault that it's not as comfortable as it comes stock, but in its current state, I wouldn't mind doing multi-hour drives, but So that's my 2020 Supra. I personally highly recommend this car if you have the ability to either A, own a car that has some compromises and not be bothered by those, or B, you have another car that's a little bit more practical. This isn't quite as impractical as a Miata, but it's certainly no M5 sedan. Thanks for watching.